And now we are recording. This is the Sunnyside Neighborhood Association meeting, and it is March 16th, 2022. And we have invited the City of Vancouver to be with us, and Judy Bailey, City of Vancouver Neighborhood Outreach, is going to introduce the presentation for us.
And I'll ask everyone now at this time to go ahead and put yourself on mute.
Thank you, Marilee. Thank you, Judy. And thank you everyone for allowing us to be here tonight. I am going to introduce Jennifer Bellnap Williamson. She is the Public Works Director, as she had mentioned in her introductions, for the City of Vancouver. And then I will let her introduce Jean for the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy. All right, I will have you go ahead and bring up some slides that we put together with just a few visuals to share with the group today. So thank you very much for having us. We are here to talk with you today because we have a project planned in the neighborhood, and it's very important to us to be a good neighbor to all of you and all of your neighbors as we go through the design and construction of this project and ultimately the operation of it. So the project is called the Public Works Operations Campus, and it is a replacement campus we will be developing in the area of the Sunnyside Neighborhood Association. And we'll show you some overview visuals here in a few slides of where it is. And Jean Singer, as she mentioned earlier during the introductions, is our project manager. So Jean will be preparing and giving some of the discussion points today about this project. We're definitely here to help answer questions for you and provide information. We're at the very early stages of a project that will have about a 5 or 6 year lifespan during design and construction. So we may not be able to answer all of your questions today because the information may not be known yet. However, we commit to coming back and connecting with you all in the future and following up with additional information as it's available. So with that, let's go ahead and switch to the first slide. We will provide you with a brief introduction to what we do in public works for City of Vancouver, which, as I mentioned, we serve not only residents of the City of Vancouver, but the broader Clark County area. And we'll talk about this project more, what its purpose is going to be, its location and its features. We'll talk about what has been done so far and what will be done around analysis and mitigation for any traffic impacts. And then we'll wrap up just by sharing next steps on community outreach and have time for your questions. So on the next slide here, just a very brief overview that we provide transportation, aviation, Pearson Airfield as part of our portfolio, as well as drinking water, wastewater treatment, and surface water management in the City of Vancouver and broader areas around the City of Vancouver that are served by our water and wastewater utilities. We have a total of about 260,000 water customers. We're the third largest water utility in the state of Washington. And we have an excellent high quality water source that we're happy to provide to folks. We also do parks and green space maintenance in the City of Vancouver. And we also manage solid waste and recycling contracts for the City of Vancouver. So you'll see on the next slide here, just an overview with some of the quick facts about the system that we manage. We manage a lot of infrastructure. We've got over 350 full-time staff and another number of seasonal staff every year that support us, as well as contractors to help us with managing our water, wastewater, transportation, and environmental systems. So we've got assets all over the region in terms of groundwater pumping systems to bring groundwater to the surface to transport to houses and reservoirs. We've got lots of miles of roads that are maintained, and the folks that work out of our operations center, the campus that we're going to be developing in your area, are really the essential workers that are working 365 days a year to make sure that you can always have water when you turn on your tap, you can always flush your toilets, you've got streets that can be driven on no matter what the conditions, although we do acknowledge sometimes the rain gets ahead of us at times, but we work closely with our Clark County partners to provide as seamless of a system for all the infrastructure we rely on as we can. So next slide, I will turn it over. Well, before I turn it over to Jean, I'll just mention here that the project area that we're talking about is shown on this slide with the maroon colored dot right above 5 corners. So that is the location that is within our water service area. So you'll see the blue boundary around our area. So I think that most of you, based on what you were saying about your locations, most of you are going to be served by our drinking water system. And then the green boundary shows our wastewater sewer service area. And then the brown outline shows the City of Vancouver city limits. So wanted to share this with you to show that a significant portion of Vancouver city limits is over to the east of 205. And our current operations center, which is shown with the orange dot, is in between I-5 and 205. So we're looking to the future to be able to serve the broader community for the next 50 years from this location. And we needed a large site, and it's hard to find large sites that are undeveloped and ready to be able to put in the kind of infrastructure we need to offer essential services. So we had an opportunity that came up with the county to purchase a portion of the former Leichner landfill. And it's a 32-acre site, which is a large enough site to accommodate those essential services and that operational need that we have from now into the future. So I'll take a brief pause here just to ask if anybody needs any clarification on the location that we're talking about, and we'll go ahead and take to the next slide because I think it's got an aerial photograph that may be helpful to you all. Oh, this is the, sorry, I forgot which order I had this in. My apologies. This is the aerial photograph showing our existing site, and our existing site is off of Fourth Plain Boulevard, and it's near the center of kind of an older area of Vancouver. This particular site is not laid out very efficiently for the size of service area that we've grown to have. It also has what's called a high liquefaction risk. I see the question that just popped up about the city limits. I'll come right back to that, but I'm going to finish talking about our existing site. So we did some analysis early on whether we could redevelop our existing site to serve the needs for this operations campus for the long term. And for all of the reasons listed here, it really was not possible to make this an efficient use for our needs for the future. So I'm working my slides here to see if I can make sure I've got the right one coming up next. Okay, I'll go to the next slide, and I'll let Jean take over from here, and Jean will talk to your question that was asked in the chat about whether this site is within the City of Vancouver or not. So Jean, do you want to take it over from here?
Sure. So yes, the new site that was selected based on our needs, and again, Jennifer mentioned this site, the new site is 32 acres. The existing site is much, much smaller. It's only 15 acres. And so we were very undersized at that location. To find 32 acres in the city limits was very challenging. And so we did find a site that is outside of the city limits, but it is within the area that the city services for public works for water utilities, and very close to our sewer utility service area as well. So it used to be a portion of the Leichner properties that were owned. It was actually never part of the active landfill. However, it is being monitored for contamination from the landfill with underground monitoring cells all over the site. The county actually owned the parcel to start as part of the landfill. They went ahead and did a master plan thinking that perhaps some sort of light industrial repurpose could happen on that site. They weren't successful finding a developer, but since the city is also partners with managing of the landfill itself, we were comfortable with having the monitoring on site. And so we went ahead and purchased the land in 2019. we're working on actually annexing this parcel into the city limits. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, it is going to be a city-owned facility, and so we need to be consistent with our own codes and our operations, so it needs to be within the city. It's also going to serve as our emergency operations center, and so if there are any emergency declarations that the city goes ahead with from policy or emergency standpoint, then that will also apply to our operations at this site. So, and like Jennifer mentioned, looking just at the region and the growth that we anticipate over the next 50 years, this site is well suited to serve all of the community from this location. It has good access to 205, it has good access to SR 500, and so our mobility will be better than we were very limited at Fourth Plain. Next slide, please. So this is a photo looking east from 94th at the site. The site is very ideal for our operations. It's very flat. It actually has excellent soils as well, which will benefit us for several reasons. Like I mentioned, this is going to be our emergency operations center, so we will be fully operational after a large seismic event here. The soils are very good. We don't have the liquefaction risk that we did at the other site. We're also going to be able to do a lot more with sustainability and low impact development because we do have really good soils on site. And we'll talk a little bit more about that through the presentation. Next slide, please. So this is our overall project vision. I'm not going to read it to you, but this is what we are trying to achieve. And there's two parts to it. It's what our goal is, and then also what our overall purpose is as public works. So we want to build a more sustainable, resilient operations center. And then we also want to be able to provide our services to the community without any disruptions. Well, minimal ones. Next slide, please. So this is a list of the facilities that will be on site. And again, this is our first introduction to this. Once we have designs on board, we'll be coming back to the neighborhood association with renderings and what buildings might look like and the site. But there's going to be three main buildings. Our administration office building, that's we'll have the cruise. It's where you would go and pay your utility bill. We're going to have a warehouse trade shop. And then we're also going to have fleet services. One of the other functions that Public Works serves is we service all of the fleet for police, fire, parks, all the different departments in the city. So those buildings are only going to be 1 or 2 stories tall. They're not going to be, big, massive buildings in terms of height. We're also going to have storage there for materials, vehicles, trucks, plows. We're also going to do some street frontage improvements, which include a new traffic signal at 94th and 88th Street. And then we're going to have some enhanced features on the site as well, which we'll talk about in the next couple slides. Next slide, please. So some of the enhanced features at this site, we want to take an opportunity of the good site we have, and also, as Jennifer pointed out, being good neighbors. One of the biggest things we're going to have is along the east and south parcel boundaries, that's along the residential area. There's going to be a 30-foot landscape buffer. It's about 3 times what you would typically have. And that's going to be planted to help minimize visual and noise from our site. We're also fortunate with the good soils. We're going to do low impact development, which means that we will be treating all of our rainwater runoff and stormwater on site, and then it will treat and then go into the ground naturally to recharge the systems. We also have been tasked with ambitious goal of having a net zero energy site. So you see solar panels. So that's something else that we're going to be working really closely with Clark PUD and our design team to figure out how we're going to achieve that. Next slide, please. So as Jennifer mentioned, this is a long project. Right now, we're just in the beginning stages of getting our design team on board and then our contractor. So in the next year, we'll be coming back to the community with open houses, renderings, and So just some other opportunities to talk about the project and what it's going to look like. Most of the construction will be 2024 to 2026. We may have some early construction in late 2023. Perhaps some of that landscape buffer planting that I mentioned, just to get the plants more time to establish before we're actually operating out of the site. But we won't have operations until 2026. Next slide, please. So traffic is always a concern when we're having new development. So we wanted to talk through some of the traffic analysis that's already been done. So we will be putting in a new signal at 88th Street and 94th. There'll be turn pockets, they'll be desized for our trucks and for allowing for those movements so that the north-south traffic can continue. We also had some preliminary analysis just based on what our staffing is going to be and what our typical truck and equipment servicing throughout the day is. We looked at our traffic, and it does align with what the county master plan had originally accounted for both this zone and this site. But that being said, we're going to do an additional traffic study once we get design underway, and we would partner with the county on this because they'll be interested in very specific intersections and corridors within a 1 mile radius of the site. And so there may be additional mitigation efforts as part of this project that we'll take on. And then the other thing we just wanted to mention is that currently the operations center is in an urban area. There's a lot of pedestrians. There's a C-Tran bus stop right there. So the crews are very aware of being safe and on site and as they're transitioning on and off of the job. So we just wanted to highlight that at this point as well. Next slide. So this is our website right now. This has the best way to get information about the project. We're going to have more updates, like I said, in the probably more next year once we have more design. But this was a great opportunity to be out here today and at least kick our project off. And so next slide, I think then we're ready for questions. I know, Jennifer, did you have anything you wanted to add or expand on with that?
Thanks, Jean. Yeah, I just wanted to really recognize for all of you that a major development at this scale going into your neighborhood is going to feel like a lot. And I really am committed to helping us design and operate a site that minimizes any impact to the neighboring community. It's very important to me that this site works well for everybody for the long term. So as we go through the design process, I want to reassure you all that we will be very aware of the fact that we have residential neighborhoods, that we've got a school nearby. And we hope over time that this site could be a learning opportunity, a place where children through, high school and even to college age could come and learn about careers, learn about environment. We do a lot of work out of these operations that make a positive impact in the community. And so that's our goal overall. I saw a question pop up around, do we have an expected noise level at night? I would say in general, our night operations are fairly quiet. We have a graveyard shift that comes on in the evening, and they're primarily out working on roads projects if there are things. And so there's not a lot of things that happen at the campus itself at night. It's a pretty minimal amount of staffing, and they're generally taking their trucks or other work vehicles and leaving the site to go address issues. It is going to be a 24-hour emergency operations center. So during a snowstorm would probably be the time when there might be the most activity at night. And it would really be for snowplows and things like that would be leaving the site. Yes, so there's a question there about a possibility for a community meeting space. That's definitely something we'll be looking at as we design those administrative buildings and thinking about access. How can we create portions of the campus that can have public access at different times of day? And then how can we have parts of it that are protected access for protecting our equipment? But that's definitely something I would love to see, a educational space, a community space that we can make good use of so that the site can be well used by the community. So yes, traffic mitigation is going to be an opportunity for us to work together with the county and make sure that this roadway system around there is adequate to handle the needs of this campus and all of the adjacent development that's been happening in the region. I do think it's important for everybody to understand the county had zoned this land as light industrial and had always planned to sell this property and develop it into something. So our hope is that we can minimize our impact and be, at least as good as, if not a better neighbor than you might have had if you'd had a large trucking operation or something coming out of there. Yes, we will be working further with the county though on the traffic mitigation. And as Jean noted, there will be a new traffic signal that will be installed. We already know that. And we'll be working on ways of modeling the flows of traffic in different times of day. The way operations typically work at our operations center are that our crews show up around 6 o'clock in the morning, and then they will do briefings and get ready for the day. And the trucks are often leaving the site anywhere from 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning. So it tends to be a little bit earlier than peak commuting hours, and then also returning back to the campus sometime between 2 to 3 in the afternoon. So a little earlier than peak commuting hours in the evenings too. Yes, you are welcome to unmute and ask questions too if the chat is not a good option for you. So go ahead.
I've lived in this area for over 25 years, and I have occasionally gone down to the intersection at 94th and Patton Parkway to watch them carting off the bodies from another wreck. They have modified that intersection a half a dozen times. They opted to put an overpass at 100th Avenue instead of 90 or 110th, I think, instead of 94th, which is the major intersection on that whole line. So I can go out here to 94th at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and cars start lining up trying to get through that intersection. The city or the county opted to turn in 94th north of Patton Parkway into a 2-lane instead of a 4-lane. So now everything gets bottled up going both ways. Patton Parkway is a mess because it's carrying 50% of the traffic going from east to west. And I'd like somebody to come up with a decent plan to fix that problem, because adding all of your vehicles, there's just a few here and there, but it adds up to a lot when you start looking at the amount of buildup that we're already dealing with. That was one concern.
Okay. Yeah.
There was one other concern. I live just off Patton Parkway, and I have yet to see any sewer on my street, although there's sewer all the way around me. So apparently they're just kind of ignoring certain areas while they're focusing on other areas. So there's going to be a big buildup north of me, up where you are, with a whole lot of energy into infrastructure. Meanwhile, my street still gets ignored. Who's paying for all of this? Is the city paying for this, or is all the people who live in this area going to get stuck with the bill?
Okay. Thank you for your questions. I'll go through them as quickly as I can, just to make sure we have time for others too. And if you have further questions, Jean's contact information is available, and we're happy to answer them over time as we can. For traffic and transportation, we certainly have heard those concerns, and I've seen them myself at the intersection of 94th and Patton. From what I understand from talking with the county, they are expanding a new roadway to the north of Patton Parkway that they think will relieve some of the traffic congestion issues. But what we do is we go out and we take traffic counts, and we model those traffic counts with existing conditions and then adding our operations on top of that. And we determine if any of those signals are going to not work as well anymore. And then we would have a conversation with the county about any improvements that need to be made to the transportation system to make the development work. So we will be back to talk to you more about that as we have more of that analysis done. Regarding the question of your sanitary sewer, this particular area is served, I believe, by Clark Regional Wastewater District. Many wastewater utilities, including ours, have programs to extend service to areas of the community that don't currently have it. We have a program in Vancouver called the Sewer Connection Expansion Program. So I can put you in touch with the folks from Clark Regional who you would contact to say, hey, I want sewer down my street. And there is a way to eventually add it over time if people want it. The last part about your question of who will pay for it. So we are a jointly funded department in the City of Vancouver that is partially funded by the City of Vancouver's general fund, and that has transportation dedicated sources as well as the general tax base that City of Vancouver provides for funding parks and some of those other components of what we do in addition to transportation. The second major component of our funding is from our water and wastewater utility customers. And just like any utility, like Clark Public Utilities that would provide your power or something like that, as a utility, we operate as a financially solvent business. We set rates, we have customers who pay for the services they get, and we make financial investments in our assets to make sure we can continue to provide services to our customers. So we invest in our pipes, we invest in our treatment systems and our reservoirs, and we invest in our operations. And so this campus is an investment that will be funded by utility ratepayers to make sure that we can continue to provide them good services for the next 50+ years, and by the citizens of Vancouver who rely on the general fund services like transportation and parks.
No state or federal funding?
We will pursue state and federal funding for it. There's a possibility it may qualify for elements of the federal infrastructure funding that has recently been approved. Some of the elements of this project site that Jean was talking about, of it being a 24-hour emergency operations center, may qualify it for some resiliency funding. And there may also be funding associated with that net zero energy usage that Jean was talking about. Our council has set as a goal for us. So we're going to go out looking for any funding we can get to try to minimize the cost to our ratepayers and customers.
Thank you.
I have a question on annexation. You said your site will be annexed by the city. Does that include neighbors around you, homes? And oh, you're just talking about a
Nope.
single site.
It is called an island annexation. So we'll be a little island of this area that was shown on slide 7. And our primary reason for doing that is we have a building code in City of Vancouver that's slightly different from Clark County's building code. And it's much easier for us to build a city asset to our own city building code. So that's really why we're doing that. But nobody else is going to be annexed around us. This is not yeah, it's just not about that. So
Okay, thanks.
well, I very much appreciate your questions. You all had great questions. So I don't want to take up too much of your meeting time tonight, but we will be back to share more information with you as we get further along with design options and have more to share. Certainly encourage you to reach out if other questions come up, and we'll keep the lines of communication open.
I have one more question since we got some time here. When the city was involved in the construction of SR 500, the original plan was to put some overpasses, and they even started building some of those overpasses. They got some money for the overpasses. Then they eventually decided not to build overpasses. I don't know what they did with the money, but they now make people drive all the way around SR 500 rather than being able to drive over the overpasses. I'm wondering if that money is still available to maybe build an overpass on 94th and Patton Parkway.
Well, I will say, I don't know all the specifics of that history. I have found myself at times taking meandering routes around Vancouver and Clark County and wondering who thought this was a good idea. So I do understand your concern. What I would suspect is, just knowing what I know about transportation funding, is that that money has likely not been sitting there waiting to be used. It's been used for something. However, we do have this federal infrastructure bill that has passed recently that is creating a lot of new revenue streams coming in for a variety of different types of infrastructure projects. And so I can certainly recommend to the county that their transportation team look for some of those funding sources to address congestion and safety at that 94th and Paddon Parkway interchange. It is, as I'm sure you know, extremely expensive to build overpasses as opposed to having surface street connections with lights. But, you know, we invest in things that are important for the community. So I think the key thing would be for the Clark County Transportation Department to hear from your neighborhood association or from you individually if you want to see something different at that intersection. And we will certainly carry that message too, that we heard that tonight.
They just had to clean up a big oil spill there from a truck that tipped over, diesel fuel all over the place. So, yeah, it's a safety issue.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again. And we will look forward to chatting more with you all in the future, and let us know if there's other things. We will we'll endeavor to have some more specifics around some of the noise questions in particular. You know, we certainly will abide by the noise requirements that the county has in code. And as Jean mentioned, our focus and goal is to have a large vegetated buffer between our operations and to really put any operations that have more of a noise component to the north of the site so that they're closer to the other industrial uses like the waste connections, administrative and transfer location for their trucks. So we will really be looking to minimize any impact on noise to the south where we're adjacent to residences.
What about on the east side? Same thing?
And on the east side, you know, we've got a big bowl there on the east side. So we'll certainly do what we can with vegetation along that buffer and and make sure that we're putting quieter things on the edges that are adjacent to properties. I did, you know, the first time I went out to the site, I looked at it and I recognize that we have to be good neighbors to the adjacent residential land uses. And so I just want folks to know that live in that area that we're not going to be ignoring the needs of the residential customers and people around there.
Well, that's really good to hear. And we want to thank you, Judy, and your team for presenting, and we'll see you, I'm not sure when, but you're welcome again when things get moving.
Okay,
we have several
so
items on our agenda. So do we have anything else for them?
I have a question for you, Judy.
Okay.
I'm the secretary of the Barberton Grange.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you're planning on taking the meetings back to the Barberton Grange anytime in the near future.
That is up in the air. We just don't know yet. It'll depend on several things. One, whether or not the county allows us to have meetings again. And
we're available.
Pardon?
We're available. We're open and doing business. We're available if you want to use it.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank
Thanks.
you. Now, I don't recognize most of you here, so I assume you haven't been to a meeting for a while. Well, beyond the 2 years where none of us were at a meeting. So we wanted to just give you a rundown of some of our activities that we do in our neighborhood association. I reactivated the neighborhood because it was not operating when about 2016, when I had a desire to know what was going on in the county. Well, it turned out there was no neighborhood association. So I reactivated it and we took it from there. We wanted to keep informed of decisions that affect the residents. And we think that that's a really important part of being a neighborhood association. We also want to give opportunities to people to get to know each other and opportunities for volunteerism. So I'm going to ask our program director, Mary Lasky, to tell us a little bit about what we're doing with Silver Star Elementary.
I work with Denisa at Silver Star, and she's the person who works directly with the students there. When she sees someone who has shoes that have holes in them or they held together with duct tape, she lets us know. And we've been able to send message to our group and say, we need shoes for second grader or third grader coats. And they could sure use some of those little oatmeal cups, because some of the children still live in cars today. And if they've got those little oatmeal cups, they can go in and get hot water from 7-Eleven and they'll have a meal. So right now, she wanted me to thank you for the coats, the shoes, all the snacks, etc. She says she does have enough granola bars and all that kind of stuff for the students. But the one thing that students are asking for that she doesn't have is those fruit gummies. So if you go to the store and you can see some fruit gummies and take them to Silver Star, Denise's office, you go through the main door and it's on the left. And you can just take things in there and say, here, I'm from the Neighborhood Association. And that's pretty much all I have to say. We appreciate your help and we'll be asking for more as time goes on.
Yeah, they're called fruit snacks, another name for them.
I'm going to ask Jim Foley to give us a little rundown on what we do at Orchard Highland Park.
So we, several years ago, we, as a neighborhood association, adopted Orchard Highland Neighborhood Park to do cleanup on it. And so the intent of that is April through September, we meet once a month, and who can make it. And it's usually during the middle of the week and during the mid-morning, usually, that's the usual hours, we do cleanup on it. So it takes roughly about an hour we plan on to go around and pick up things, trying to keep the park nice and clean. There are some people who actually do it by themselves as they walk through the park. So it's not that it's really nasty, but it needs to be cleaned once in a while, especially in the middle of where the brush is. People throw things there and as you walk around, you don't see it. We also, sometimes there's an issue with ivy growing on trees, and we work with that. And so what if you'd be willing to help with that, Judy sends out a list to a certain list of people, and it's a smaller list than she sends out now, I think, to people who wants to volunteer to help, such and such a time, such and such a date. If you can show up, and all you need to bring is some gloves and a bag to put the trash in you find. And that's about it. It's like I said, we've been doing it for several years, and in the wintertime we do it like once maybe.
Thank you, Jim. I would like to introduce Scott Golfini, and he's going to tell us about a trauma intervention program that he's involved in.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, TIP Northwest, you can find it online. It's tipnw.org. It's a trauma intervention program, works with first responders for people that have just suffered a loss of life. We're providing emotional support for the survivors. So if a person has passed away inside a home and there's loved ones there, the emergency responders will come on site, of course, and try to revive. If their dispatch will contact TIP dispatch, and TIP will dispatch volunteers that are on call to respond to that scene. So my wife and I, we've been a part of it for a little over a year now. We started in Portland and are expanding now over in this area, and have quite a few teams already and we're a part of the team in the area. So there's a training academy coming up here in March. Just wanted to, towards the end of March, want to make that available, and also just let you know that it's a volunteer citizen participation, people helping people get through the tough stuff. It's like not being alone on the worst day of your life. So thank you, Judy.
How many people are involved in that in the area?
I would guess probably about 30 people in Vancouver and possibly up to 100 people in the Portland area.
Oh,
So to be a volunteer, yeah, just if you're interested in it or finding out more, uh, I can put a link in the chat.
okay. And if you'd like to send me a short paragraph about it, when I put out a newsletter that goes to about 230 people, they would see that also. Just give me a
Excellent.
paragraph with the links on it and what they need to do in order to sign up.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's excellent training. And I'll tell you, I've utilized that training in way more areas of my life than just volunteering. So it's been great. And just it's like, oh, I don't know what to say. It's like the tip is say nothing and just listen. So that's what I have to share.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to tell you about a little bit about the Clark Food Project. It's also known as the Green Bag Program. The Clark Food Project, every other month on a Saturday, volunteers around the county collect food from a team of people that they have signed up. And then we deliver it to food banks. And since there's 6 a year, it keeps a steady flow of food to these to people who are in need. What I'm looking for now, rather than just adding people to my team, I have 10 people on my team, and that fills up the trunk of my car. I don't have room for too many more bags of food. So if I'm looking for anyone who's interested in actually being a team member, it's not a difficult thing to do. Your main job would be to drive around for about an hour and pick up food from the people who are providing it to your team and taking it to the food bank, and that's about it. There's a really strong team of people in the county working on this. And I'm going to, tomorrow morning, I'm going to send out some links to things that we've mentioned today. And I'm going to send out a link to the Clark Food Project that'll give you a lot of information about how you get started running your own team.
Judy, if you'd like, I can share my screen and show that little short, I think it's a 1 or 2 minute video that's on their website.
Sure, that sounds good.
This is something new for me to try to do, so bear with me for a second. I'm trying to do a little bit fancier of things and learn a little bit more at every single meeting. So let's see here. Where's my share screen? And then I want to do this and share it.
Have you ever been really hungry and not known where your next meal is coming from? Most Americans are pretty lucky when it comes to food. The only question we have to ask is, what will I eat? Some Americans are not so lucky. They have to ask, will I have enough food to eat? About 41 million Americans struggle with hunger every year. That's almost 1 in 8 of us. And about 13 million of them are children. These kids and their families know something that most of us will never have to learn. Being hungry all the time isn't just a distraction. Hunger changes everything. It puts people more at risk for disease. It makes it tough to hold jobs or concentrate in school. It can even harm expectant mothers and their babies. Hunger is a trap for seniors on fixed incomes, for disabled vets, for the working poor. Often, after rent, utilities, and other basic expenses are paid, there's just not enough money left to feed themselves or their families. That's when food banks become a lifeline, providing emergency food supplies. There are more than 50,000 of them in the United States, almost all independent, local nonprofits run by volunteers. They need a regular supply of nutritious items like tuna, cereal, peanut butter, tomato sauce, and pasta. That's where you and the Food Project come in. You want to help? We make it easy. It's all in the power of one green bag. The Food Project is an easy way to work with neighbors to provide a steady supply of food to your food bank. Here's how it works. A volunteer called a neighborhood coordinator signs up neighbors and friends to be food donors. Each donor gets a reusable green Food Project bag. When they go to the supermarket each week, they buy one extra non-perishable food item, take it home, and store it in the bag. Then every 2 months, on the second Saturday of every even month, their neighborhood coordinator picks up their bag and leaves an empty one for the next time. All the bags of food are taken directly to the food bank, where volunteers unpack, weigh, and shelve the food. And it really works, because when your bag is combined with your neighbor's bags, you create the unbeatable power of community. Already, millions of pounds of food have been collected by food projects around the U.S. This is the kind of neighbor-to-neighbor program we need. Something that brings out the best in us as we work together to solve real-life problems. So, start or join one where you live. Help change the world, one green bag at a time.
That was a little longer than I thought it was going to be, so sorry about that, but it does
That's
show how
okay.
it works.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, so if you're interested, just go, we'll have that link for you for tomorrow about the Clark Food Project. And I'm also now, I wrote down the link to the trauma intervention program, so I will include that in my list for tomorrow too. So thank you, Scott. At our meetings, guest speakers are chosen to provide information to us. And one of the things the county does is supply us with, help us get some good speakers. So we choose them because of the topic. So I wanted to know if there's any topic anyone would really like to have a guest speaker on. We've had people on animal controls, people from the sheriff's office, the CRESA, Clark Emergency Services, such as earthquakes and wildfires. So I'd like to hear from people here tonight and see if there's anything in particular that you would like to know about. We will be having Judy Bailey's team here again. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. We are committed to having about 3 or 4 meetings a year. I'm not sure when those will start up in person again. We've had people also speak about parks, roads, county codes. So if anyone can think of something you'd really like to hear from, let us know, and we will see what we can do. I would like to get someone from the Port of Vancouver. A lady named Julie Rawls is very knowledgeable. She's the communications person for them. And I think that would make a good presentation also sometime. So let us know what it is you'd like to hear from, who you'd like to hear from.
Whatever happened with that plan to put in all that industry along the rail? You know, that train that runs out through this area. They were going to do all that developing there. Whatever happened with all that?
I don't have an answer to that. I just know that there's a lot of controversy, a lot of problems. Marilee, do you have any kind of update on that?
I don't have a direct update. I know that several months ago, it was still in litigation, and so they weren't talking about it at that point in time yet until there is some problem solved with the legal end of things. There's issues between the rail operator and then the county that owns the land, and there's some sort of contract for operating the rail on the county's land that there is some litigation on.
Well, there seemed to be a problem too that I read about, that things that were going to be put there, that it changed. And they added housing and other things that weren't in the original overlay. So it's probably quite a ways off from happening right now.
I can check on that for you tomorrow and get some information from community planning on what's going on with that. I'm trying to remember, it was like, it was a new zoning, it was industrial rail. That was different than light industrial, different than heavy industrial. It was specifically industrial to be along the railways.
Right.
And
it
so
morphed
I think
into
that's what you're
something
talking
else.
about.
Yeah, and the impact.
So did you want me to go ahead and close the recording at this time?
Sure, I think we've, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna close it, and you probably have some more discussion before you adjourn, but closing the recording now.
Okay.